actually here with Sirius Stellus Moon, and the moon is conjoining Deneb Algety. So this is a Jupiter hour. The moon is in the 11th house. It is squaring Black Moon Lilith. But I am going to consecrate with you a little bit of Deneb Algety materia. I'm going to put on my Palo Santo. And I'm not going to create new materia. Yes, this is Saturn ruled midheaven. Okay, I'm not gonna light any fire in that one, but I'm definitely just going to honor my Deneb Algety materia. And the reason is this Saturn ruled midheaven. And because Moon is squaring Black Moon Lilith, and ruled by retrograde Saturn, so I'm not consecrating new materia. However, recording, this is going to be, first of all, I'm going to address what made me press record. Ascendant 1 degree Aries, ruled by Mars in the 8th house, thus ruling over Black Moon Lilith, Neptune, and Chiron, and Aries. Jupiter hour, Jupiter 22 in Cancer. But let's go to YouTube. There is an energy that is masturbating on pictures of me, the child. I've hid the pictures. It's really fucking annoying. I don't identify what energy is that, but it's really fucking annoying. So anybody who is energy reader can help me clear that. That would be fantastic. I don't currently have the ability to give you a payment or a dividend, so that would only be charity based. Yeah, targeted individual. That shit happens. Now, Seizure Girl just posted something that prompted me to press record. And she talks about apartment living being unrealistic. We're not meant to be stacked on top of each other like boxes in a warehouse. Will this energy that tries to masturbate on children stop being around? I don't know. It creates nonstop conflicts and so on and so forth, supposedly noise complaints. And the problem is not bad neighbors, but basically bad housing. This is so true, and it prompted me to press record about an energy reading. So, for me and my mom, I'll begin with a personal story, and that will lead up to the general reading. For me and my mom, I noticed that having space between our residents would really improve upon the relation. And it was decades upon decades of trying to do that, trying to find a place where I'm sovereign, and then trying to reestablish a relation in a way that is safe for both of us. And then I had escaped the human trafficking apartment. So we kind of reached a situation where it was almost there in terms of having a safe relation, having understanding when does one come to see the other, and having, a little bit helping one another in their own house. And then there was the human trafficking issue. So from now, when it comes to me receiving energy readings, the topic of housing kept coming up, particularly when Ra was in my 4th house, which is housing. And the topic kept coming up. So from one reader, she just bought a house and she was just inspiring everyone around that, but then she became targeted individual, and I think she was very likely tortured, and then she tried to betray me, and I really don't know what was the story behind that, but that was really, really dumb fuckery thing, and it seemed to be on and off something that she dealt with Um, I guess coming from a family that I don't know what they had to do to get housing or jobs or whatnot. And she was kind of like I don't want to say the black swan, but definitely the person that probably didn't want to do that. The person that tried to come up with a more secular, perhaps, way of seeing life. Um, so, yeah, that was going on. But even they told me about the housing, where am I living, and so on, to start thinking about that. And actually, at the time, the person I was cohabiting with was also thinking to buy an apartment. And for me, I was like, okay, probably after my studies, I'll get a bigger house so that if people come for consultation, I can receive them in a separate room and so on. But one of the important energy readings I got was around what I meant to do, and that had to do with curating the allowing people to notice thank you, how the environments that they are living in are affecting their lives, health, relations. Now, I read some things around like feng shui and stuff when I was a student and tried to do the changes in my own apartment. I was severely psychically attacked. Um, and even when it came to a colleague of mine that I don't know how they reached me in the astral, and that was something that was incredibly confusing. Then I found out that they're in a personality code, and I was being and even now I'm being incredibly cautious because I'm not here to blame people for things that they're genuinely and authentically not to blame, but also, not holding people accountable. If there was some conscious thing to do with the trafficking aspect of personality codes, and that would mean that the person is fragmented in their soul, in that, not in the soul, in their personality in that case. So it's very, very weird. I never met this person in the physical, um, and I never had any expectations like from this person. So that was something that came about. Their spousey was a person that dealt with feng shui and health and stuff, and later did talismans. So the topic of real estate came into my life in ways where we both had, like, I have Chiron in the fourth house and Rahu Chiron, and basically those understandings about curating and about the spirit and matter aspect of housing was something that I was severely attacked. And also when it came to tending to political assassination prevention, one of the cases that I would tend to would be a case of a person that needed to live in a safety house and having even separate from their spouse. Um, and again, I don't know if there was some sort of a trafficking, whatever scam around those figures. Like, I really don't know anything if they're in those lists or not in those lists. But definitely, I saw that there was a cult practice in that something got exposed about ritual abuse in real estate. So, as far as I'm concerned, the topic of living and cohabiting, it just began from, let's say, me realizing that me and my parent would have better relations if we had separate apartments in which we are both happy. That negates a lot of depopulation, homelessness, trafficking type of agendas. And when Seizure Girl, who is herself escaping trafficking, um, mentioned that, I said, I gotta get up on an energy reading because I encountered a lot of people that were looking for a house and the energy was not right. And there was even a person that tried to contact me when I was doing aromatherapy, but they were supposedly carrying something that I said, well, listen, I'm not certified to treat in that case. Um, and later they would try to curate their housing, and I think they were targeted individual. And I said, listen, it looks like it's something to do with Chiron and fourth house, and it looks like you're gonna have to come up with your own cure for housing. For them, unlike me, they were more into cohabiting because they didn't want to live alone. And I also had fears of living like alone. Um, but also needed my own space to be myself, to sing, to express myself, to curate, which requires to be able to scream into the wind, but not to be able to scream for help that nobody listens. And these are the challenges that we have with design, housing, and communities. Um, and basically, that timeline, especially with the many homeless people going missing, homeless people murdered, homeless people being put in concentration camps, that targeted individuals targeted to be homeless, then I feel like this is a place for a little energy reading on the topic. And first of all, I want everybody to consider the fact that the worst violence of everything is happening as wealth consolidation, rituals to consolidate wealth to do with real estate and resources. That affects everyone. Before private equity, before flipper scams, before checking the tenants, before all of that, there's no getting away with the fact that this stands at the basis of our housing upbringing, real estate, any type of real estate. A tent in the woods is a real estate. I just saw, I talked about Oregon, but aside of Oregon, I saw a person that bought his own land in the village where he was going to school, and he couldn't put a fucking RV, mind the F, mind the F word, okay? He couldn't put a freaking IV, a fucking IV, okay, on the property that he bought, that it's his property. And it was a lady that went to school with him that had to evacuate him, saying she just does whatever is ordered. And then he came back to reimagine the the home he's going to build on that property in that municipality. Laser focus. I hope it's not invested in laser. Um, but it's something that, you know what, let's think about laser focus for a second, because that's Neptune Aries. And we understand that the people, you know, also in my motherland, Netherlands, my fatherland, but it's also my motherland because most of my Dutch culture I got from my mom, although she's the Israeli one. Um, and houses were exploding next to between my uncle and a state and a village, and then Bosch, okay, which is known for ritual abuse. But it's kind of like the whole country, and evacuated. Remember when my uncle went with his, became a taxi driver, and He had to leave his dog and he had to take his dog back. His people were being evacuated from like 40 houses because of the explosions. And like it's so clear that one of these places was a place where that was kind of like a death row place. And so, yeah, that affects the real estate. So, what I am saying is that for the people who watch this, the topic of the topic of real estate is a topic that many of you are kind of assigned to deal with. And if you're watching me, then many of you, not unlike me, have avoided the topic. Some of you professionally, some of you, and I want you to consider the placements. Chiron in the fourth house, Chiron Rahu, okay? Chiron Moon, Rahu Moon, Chiron Rahu Moon, all of these placements are scheduled to curate topics around housing, upbringing, fertility, which is exactly what Caesar Gold does. Magic as well, particularly for the moon placements. And with Rahu, psychiatry. Okay? Rahu is the place where it can give illusions. It's kind of Neptunian, but it's the place where it can give illusions and also manifestations. Um, and a lot of people, if you're on that trajectory, you've been avoiding your Rahu, or you've been avoiding your moon. Or that every time that Chiron, something goes through Chiron and something weird is happening. Actually, one of the good advices that I received upon my channeling experiment was I was watching the energy around the Chiron line, and I was receiving stuff from my grandfather. It was someplace in Germany. I don't remember. I need to. I probably need to redo that. And it brought on the topics of the Chiron wound to be resolved, and then I would travel to Netherlands as well. And there were even things to do with Anne Frank, which was funny because some of the people that knew me said that I look a little bit like Anne Frank. I don't know. I don't think. Now there were all kind of conflicting interests around that, um, and some of them were quite trafficky. So yeah, um, Rahu can also have to do something with the mafia because if it's taken on the Neptunian stuff, that can actually. Now everybody has a Rahu somewhere, but Rahu is about discerning the illusion from reality. It's something that it's kind of like a Fata Morgana, and then we see that it was actually still a desert, but there is um, where we ask where are the real water, and we might find out that maybe we went so off the rails, and then we got a complete what looks like hallucination about a well being in that place, and then we'll find out that there was actually a well in that place, or that there's actually something there that that is the wealth or that is the curation, but it can definitely be, you know, longing to be in a certain place. And it's the fact that you think about entrepreneurs. So think about the concept of the promised land. It's a concept where it's like it somebody has to somebody has to be in that land. Somebody has to build something in that land. It seems like it's like, how would you get a person to do that? You tell them that it's the promised land. You put them in a risky situation and tell them to go there, and so on and so forth. Now, part of that is completely scammy. And another part is, hey, new countries need to be found. Somebody has to do that. It's absolutely not a thrilling situation, but these souls are meant to venture somewhere new in their lives. And this is where people, how should I say that? With Rahu, people are going to have to, they're going to have to leap forward on those topics. Now, with Rahu Chiron, they create their own healing in a place where they've never been before. So think about Rahu. Let's say your Rahu falls in someone's 10th house. So that's somebody's 10th house. They know how to do their 10th house. And you have Rahu there is like, okay, something about you is becoming like them. But let's say of Rahu Chiron, you're becoming like them, but you're gonna have to heal something about that facet because there's something that was relevant to them, but it's not relevant to you. It's like something along the way that they did the 10th house was one step forward, and you're gonna have to make the next steps forward that you can't get by just watching them doing the 10th house. And when it's Chiron, it might be the type of row where you're not really excited to leap in to that place because it stirs up a wound. But then you might be longing to curate that wound. Okay? And while you're longing to curate that wound, it can also be with Chiron, with Rahu Moon or Rahu Chiron Moon. While you're longing to curate that wound, you might not even pay attention that you're stepping in the footsteps of the people that have been on the lineage of that wound. Okay? In a very. Now, let's say that's your 4th house. So for you, you're just looking to curate your upbringing, looking to curate your home, looking to have a housing. Okay? Now, the thing is that um, whoever meets us where our Rahu and Chiron is, they're meeting us in a place where they might try to even assist or even tend to their own wounding around this topic, while we are the Chiron folks are going to have, particularly the Chiron here, Chiron Moon or Chiron Rahu, we're going to have to to comprise our own medicine. And it's going to also be exposing of what's the things that are not working in the concoction that other prescribe to us. Now, anybody that approaches a Rahu Chiron, and sometimes it's certain, for example, when Rahu returned for me, I was not even aware that I was learning astrology from a teacher that had Rahu Chiron. And my Rahu Chiron was pretty adjacent because we were about the same age, just 6 months difference. And so um, basically, in those times where that Rahu is accentuated, you might be even juxtaposed to people that have a similar wound. Chiron in the same sign, Rahu in the same sign, Moon in the same sign where your Chiron is at. I'm having a lot of eurekas right now. Okay? Or in the times where your Chiron is triggered or your Moon is triggered. It can be a moon year. Um, Dasha for those that practice Vedic astrology, Moon Dasha, Rahu Dasha. Um, and then what happens is that that those juxtapositions tend to be juxtaposed. And this is where each and every person is on the path of comprising that type of medicine. Okay, for example, I have Uranus in Sagittarius. One of the cases where it was I was working on somebody's chart. When I say working, I simply mean delineating. That I don't do like other type of stuff. Um, and I was looking at the chart, and then that person has fourth house Sagittarius because we're opposite ascendants, and literally all the information about the real estate of the lineage began to leak. And so, and I was like, okay, that's interesting. Now I have Uranus in my fourth house, and so it ingressed to my Chiron, and I had to leave a real estate that was trafficky, so all of my family pictures were left there, which means that literally all of the information about my upbringing, family, estates I lived in begins to leak. Like, it's the worst, if somebody would try to have my name involved in a real estate scam, how should I say that? Karma was not favoring them. Because they're gonna know. And they're gonna know by the merit of everything about my fourth house being exposed. Like, they're not gonna be able to hide that, because if they try to link, if they was trying to hone in from something from my upbringing, but in a way that would be scammy, or in a way that would, you know, that would put me having housing at risk, the whole world gonna know is what I'm saying. And that would, and that means whoever that person is, by the way, it was like, I don't know. I have no idea. And sometimes those are sensitive topics, and it's like they're gonna know anyway. Think about it. My upbringing was like, you see the pictures, daddy, mommy, and me. Who's the dad? Both. So is it like a no, they were divorced. And I I just went from a I got away from a trafficy place. My family pictures got left there, and oh, but why did I have to have the other one? Well, perhaps the father lineage had to do with ritual abuse, and they couldn't have a biological daughter. Now it links to the whole family. Okay, so um, and so I will add to that Uranus in the fourth house, going through the fourth house. Okay, for example, if you are wondering, but how does your Jupiter like? But how is your Uranus was exposing somebody else? How can you avoid that? Well, you can't. That person was having a lot of Saturn return to do with ruling of Saturn being ruled by Jupiter, Saturn return, and all kind of stuff. So it's like they were scheduled to have that, whether by me or by another person. So, so the people, but if somebody had a corruption where they were trying to do identity theft or involve my name or my energy or my ability to have a house in that, then oh my god, that's not their lucky hour, or like that's not their luckiest 7 years, just to put it that way. And so those are the astrological placements. And when it comes to the energy reading, and I am adding Uranus going through the fourth house or Uranus in the fourth house. Now, for those that have Pluto in the fourth house or going through the fourth house, it's a little bit different. But I do give you a warm piece of advice. Don't be like the people that did tax evasion by opening a Swiss bank account. Okay? One of two things is going to happen. What money? Or here are the list of people that have a Swiss bank account, which happened to the CEO of Leumi Bank a couple of years ago, and some other people. Okay. One of the time where it happened, Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin resigned because his spouse he had had an account. So yes, those who are looking to have stealth wealth, well, and Neptune, how should I say that? Going through the house of the ruler of the fourth, or the fourth, or being in those houses, well, it's kind of mafiosi, it's kind of secret society, it's kind of going to leak, is what I'm saying. Um, so, yeah. Now, that connects me to another topic. If you will say, what is the energy reading? That's the energy reading, is that many of you are on the path to dealing with those things, um, and those are things that at some segments in the life one can't avoid dealing with. And with Chiron, it's having to comprise your own cure, but it also links to the fact that there are agendas against housing. And those of you that are scheduled to deal with those things are basically scheduled to be a part of the changing times. Um, okay, and that changes to everything that the person lives in. More than that, I mentioned Neptune. The part of the body that's associated with where Neptune is in your chart or the transit in Neptune can have to do with something that one might be having dissociation dealing with, but also tending to that part can expose a lot of things and bring about both miraculous healing and everything that was in the everything that was relying on you not healing that part will probably fall apart. Now, with Neptune, it can be something difficult to diagnose, so I always opt for any type of holistic healing. And if that is in any way associated with Chiron, like even being, right now Neptune is in Aries. So let's say you have Mercury in Aries ruling over the fourth house. Neptune is already co-present with that Mercury. So is Aries, the cloning project, the Epstein cloning project, elite, dark magia, whatnot. Um, that's that type of stuff. Neptune is in a sign of real estate. So a lot of you are scheduled to tend to these topics. And now the thing is that most of us have already had a wound or two about that. So much so, I used to make the comparison to the peace with the Palestinians. After the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin, a lot of people tried to, deal with that, and then some people said, okay, that is just something that I don't know how to deal with, and they try to deal with other topics. Now, those topics are related. Um, but definitely, when 7th of October hit, then I knew because of my colleagues that this is Maui. And I said, we're being Mauied. Um, laser focus. Uh, Robert Caro. Robert Caro. Anyway. Um, okay. So for the people that are going through that, a lot of you have had tremendous wounding around upbringing, real estate, housing, some of you including fertility. And whenever you try to tend to that, it seemed like, oh my God, that just creates a bigger mess. And some of you said, okay, I'll try not to tend to that. But when you try not to tend to that, the mess just becomes bigger until it forces you to tend to that. And and when it does, it's also where the wound has been about the fact that the old ways of doing real estate just don't work anymore. Some of that is fantastic. We don't want that through Epstein, that through Epstein Mar-a-Lago to work, okay? When I ran away from the apartment, I said, where am I going to put my things? Mar-a-Lago? um, and by the way, for the people that are on, the schedule to tend to that, the reason that they do these rituals is that there's this chemical called an endocrine that they get high on, And apparently it's more addictive than drugs. That's it's not so wealthy in the elite. I mean, and I said what I said when I began to do certain charts, Bilderberg and Belsen and so on. But even before that, some people around was thinking, "Oh my God, she's a gold digger," and I'm like, couldn't be farther from the truth. I'm trying to escape trafficking and understand what's the problem. And those things are done for real estate. And I said, what people think on this, but they don't understand when the wealth is actually distributed to the people that survived the human trafficking. That's a canoe tops. Like people. Yeah. I don't remember where I saw people having a canoe sailing somewhere. It was kind of romantic, and but those are not things that people can swipe under the rug. And the more war crimes they try to do to swipe that under the rug creates more and more awareness, particularly of the people that you think about it. Germany, there's this nice couple where she's from Vietnam and he's from Germany, and you think about the person coming from Vietnam to Germany, having a satire on the culture of you can steer your teacup, and I actually do mean tea. And the neighbors are going to call the police. Then imagine having a tantric orgasm. So imagine a home birth. So orgasmic birth is quite vocal. Cloning projects. People being castrated because of the dumb fuckery. But this generation, as you can see, generation that escaped the human trafficking, looking here at Seizure Girl that had this, public post, but there are many Gen Zers and millennials that are becoming aware of those things. It's not about a bad tenant, but we're just not meant to be in apartments. Now that's happening. People say, "Oh, but people are homeless. She should be thankful." No, 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 no. People are being laser focused because they told the person that escapes trafficking and dark magic in their home and workplace to get a job by Epstein is actually more the reason that we need to tend to these topics. 99% of psychiatry is targeted individuals that people wanted to put in homelessness or foster home sozusagen on purpose to take their assets, take their decisions, and drug them up. Now, what would be the side effect as a holistic health practitioner if somebody tells me, well, there's a side effect to this and that pill? And I'm like, okay, what are the side effects? Wait, why are the side effects perpetuating trauma? Perhaps you are in that psychiatric situation because you've been in a situation where you were put in a situation that perpetuates trauma for you. So the side effect of the pill, the conventional pill that they try to give to you, would be something that you can no longer deal with and would do anything to take out of your body. Psychiatrists saying, oh, there is a revolving door. If people are going out of the hospital, coming in, going out, if only they would take their pill. What pill? White pill, blue pill, red pill? What is a revolving door? What is the state of revolving door? What happens in a revolving door? Revolving door, you think about the myelin and you think about the cells. There are those parts in the body that works kind of like a revolving door that are supposed to let in what is good and take the toxins out. When they can't contain the toxins, or where there's something wrong with that revolving door, then people begin to be like a revolving door. Now, what on earth would put them in that situation? On the spirit matter, perpetual trauma, excess of toxins in the body, and lack of nutrition that is antifungal, basically Middle Eastern nutrition. Okay, just the Mediterranean diet is basically usually good for people. I know it's more on the pescatarian, but again, that may differ for different people. And on the physical level, they're being given food that is coming from soil that is imbued with byproducts of the Industrial Revolution that interfere with absorption of minerals. And then they're prescribed pills that further interfere with that absorption of minerals. For example, amphetamines interferes with the absorption of magnesium. And yes, I do have the certifications to talk about those things, being a holistic health practitioner, because even if I prescribe, I don't know, an oil and intention to someone, if that someone is living in Utah and people are messing with their intention, then that's not going to do the deed. We're going to actually, that it would do the deed of exposing that somebody's interfering with their intention, but it would also expose that they are living in a satanic cult, because that's the work of those cults, to basically try to take something somebody creates and divert it to something that is malefic to that someone. Which gets me to the next point. When it comes to the dark occult practices, they are basically plagiarizing occult. This is why sexual boundary violation is so associated with plagiarism and grief, by the way. And this is because they are relying on taking a created thing and trying to take that energy to their own nefarious meaning, and they have to do a series of perpetuation of trauma, which is basically irrational and antithetical, because they're trying to make something bad look good, because they try to tap into and something good look bad. So they try to tap into the energy of creation and basically control it and do bad things with it. But that energy has this kind of like a babushka. Okay, if you try to bring down a babushka, it always pops up, and that's what's happening to the life creation, to the life energy. So when it comes to the real estate, you will see certain projects getting stuck because there's some stuck energy that needs to be released, and that stagnant or stuck energy has to do with something, that was some sort of a ritual that was made where somebody else energy was taken to that ritual, and that energy needs to be retrieved to that individual. Now, if that individual is no longer alive, then whoever will be in that dwelling will have to tend to, basically those practices and to abolish them. For example, when I left the trafficking apartment, I didn't know that what happened to the realtor, that was used to be their estate. I had no idea that he was like with those cults, or to what extent or what degree he was with those cults. I thought that they were hacking into his nervous system, and this is why I was really forgiven with that person at first. And I told them, listen, there are trafficking cults that try to take over the real estate. They don't intend to keep you alive. And what you need to do, you sold a lot of apartments to people in community that does ritual abuse. Those children are going to need apartments, and you're going to have to tend to that. Now, I didn't know that he was doing ritual abuse together with them, okay? So, I had no idea, okay? So, and I didn't know that he was afraid of me digging the half moons because I would find bodies. Like, I didn't find bodies, but it's like that's the only reasonable thing with bringing it all together to think about. Because as I was digging up the half moons, there was some energy I was tending to, and I was like, hearing, never mind the bodies in the backyard. So, I don't know. I knew there was oil and gas underneath because it's like next to the Dead Sea. Um, then there were a couple of attempts to get me the fuck out of there, and because it's becoming more like orthodox and so on. But I was like, okay, I don't know where to go and all that. Um, but because there may have been some things that were to do with some things, then this is what the things tend to unfold, and you're going to notice that each and every one of you is going to notice that in their own way, that the things tend to unfold and require a lot of radical acceptance. And it is juxtaposing all of the agendas to enslave humanity on a real estate level, on an upbringing level, even on a cloning level. Because every time they try to go up a notch, all the things from the past are popping. Think about growing a business. Okay, before I was growing. Okay, when I had my RAW return, the ruler is in my second house of Aries, which is my own income, and basically I began to arrange whether it was my credit score or having my own checks, my bank, the paperwork, my credit, and so on. And there was this new app where I could actually charge money, and so I began to write down the things and the due diligence and everything I had to do. And then of course I was attacked. But some of these attacks also showed me where are the taxes going, because if I would be going a little bit further, I would be already a registered business that needs to pay taxes. Okay, I never crossed that threshold, and before crossing that threshold, both the dark and the light tried to approach me and show me, listen, before you cross that threshold. Now, the dark interest, they wanted me to cooperate with them. And I'm like, hey, you're the reason why that doesn't work. Okay, you're the reason why my taxes are not going to the people that need to go to. And so you're basically trying to get me to not pay taxes, but to go with them with the human trafficking. And I'm like, that's not really yielding. It's trying to traffic me. And at the same time, paying taxes would fund for infiltrations of the system. And I kind of needed to see what would be if my business would be successful and I would go through the threshold where I would have to pay taxes. And so at that point, I was severely attacked. I was doing a channeling experiment, and there were a lot of things that they were doing with psychic attacks and all this kind of weird stuff. And the answer is not to close oneself to these type of senses. In fact, my academic work to do with the politics of the senses, this talked about just that. It's not about other people deciding if a person will be psychic or not. The astral plane, and the thing is that because when people begin to be psychic, they begin to know. I mean, look at Gigi Young. She talks about all these things from being a person that developed their psychic abilities before Christ consciousness. And why was it that her house, when she was working on Venus, fertility, working on a Venus series, psychic, fertility, and so on, suddenly her house was washed with the flood? That was not a natural disaster. And so when it comes to even the people that want to enslave humanity, every step forward that they're moving, they need to deal with all the things that are rising up. Okay, for example, let's say they want to use psychiatry against a person. Today, they can no longer do that without being considered full-blown Dr. Mengele. So many class litigations won against each and every product that they prescribe. The information about targeted individual being an agenda to put people either in psychiatric or homeless or drug addicted by force. The common knowledge of the people that people are being kidnapped. And the news about psychiatric staff raping and burying alive patients. The ability to just say, well, this is not from the pill, but if they don't take that pill, it's going to be like a revolving door. Even the psychiatrists themselves begin to see that something here is very off, and that something's not the patient. And now, to try to do the next step of enslaving humanity, they're already dealing with masses upon masses upon masses upon masses of people that even if they had nothing to do with the psychiatric anything, they're just, hey, in COVID they told us it's not from the pill, it's not from the booster shot, it's not from the this. So there are less and less families willing to hunt their children down or hunt their loved ones down to, and think about the Britney Spears story that came out before COVID. So every step forward that they try to move, and one of my essays about the British Empire using basically